Welcome, Zemo. It is so lovely to have you here visiting with us all the way from Mexico. Thank you for being part of this conversation today. I want to introduce all of you to Zemo Trevathan. Zemo has been a dear colleague for the last several years. He's been a part of our course, the Choose Abundance Intensive, and has helped to actually strengthen it, develop it, and make it even better. And he's going to be a guest in this next year's cohort starting in the fall. But we just had some time together, just back in February, I think. Yeah. And
Yeah,
yeah. And so I'd like to introduce everybody to you, have you share a little bit about your experience with us. Zemo's really an expert in culture change, which is why he's been part of this culture of philanthropy leadership team. So, if you would, let's just get right to the heart of it. Would you tell us a
sure,
little bit about culture change and some things about culture change that people might not already know?
sure. Thanks, Lori. Um, so two things immediately come to mind in terms of like the secrets of culture change that are obvious once you really hear them and get them, but people completely overlook as a matter of course. And the first one is culture change is not an overnight process. It takes time. And I'm actually part of what's so fun and rewarding about coming and doing this work as a part of your team, Lori, is you already emphasize that as you teach about culture of abundance and culture of philanthropy, and that it takes hearts, minds, and actions. Is that the third one?
Structures.
Hearts, structures, hearts,
Structures.
minds, and structures.
Yeah.
Right. Hearts and minds don't change overnight,
Right.
especially the hearts part. And I've seen many leaders in many organizations. The logic of the culture change is obvious. If we don't do it, we're not going to survive. It's going to benefit us. The logic is so huge. The minds will get this immediately. Hearts take longer. And so I think that's just good to remember going off. Hearts can be won over, but it takes demonstration, it takes time, it takes consistency. And that leads to the probably the most important practical secret of culture change is there are some friends of mine did some research and identified 7 different things you can do to support culture change as leaders. There's 7 levers you can push in your organization. And of the 7, one is by far the most important thing, and that is walk the talk. If leaders are walking the talk, are modeling and exhibiting the attitudes and behaviors of the desired culture change, it's gonna happen. And if they aren't, it's not.
Yep. And to your point, Zemo, it's like, so, we talk about the hearts and minds, they're the behaviors. Those are the behaviors. That's the walking the talk,
Yeah,
and they're the structures. And so, yeah, by making sure that the leaders are stepping up and embodying a culture of philanthropy, a culture of abundance, and demonstrating it with their actions, it makes a huge difference. Speaking of leading, right? This last session that we had together in the Choose Abundance Intensive, we did a lot of work with Dare to Lead. And we really combined some of Brene Brown's thinking and your thinking. Can you just talk a little bit about that? What were some of the highlights of that? And what were the things that you learned or shared with us that might be transferable to somebody watching this video?
sure. Well, I've been teaching and training leadership and communication skills for 30 years. And I knew of Brene and I'd seen a couple of videos, but you asking me to read the book and kind of integrate that into my approach, it changed how I think about it. Brene Brown is definitely one of the forefront leaders, researchers, and teachers in all this. And I think that the thing that most stuck with me out of it specifically was the simple phrasing. The story I'm telling about this is blank. Um,
Yeah.
you know, Brene's really emphasizing that we make up stories about the facts, and then for the most part, we tell those stories as if they're the truth, but owning this is the story I'm telling. It's such a perfect fit into all of the other ideas and attitudes of culture of philanthropy, the generosity it takes, and the egolessness.
Yeah, and the authenticity, right? It's about being very real, which fits well into identifying the paradigm, the framework of scarcity thinking, and how scarcity language and thinking influences how we behave, and how important that is for building a culture that fosters generosity and giving and sharing of resources. As you think about that, is there anything that strikes you around the connection? I know you and I have had a couple of conversations offline, not during the course, right? About the two different worlds that we live in, right? That we can live in scarcity and fear, or we can live in a place of abundance and possibility and thinking bigger. How does that resonate in your work that you do around culture change with all different organizations, including the work that we did together?
It to me, it's become a pretty fundamental checkpoint. It's like an on-off switch, like a light switch, um, where that noticing when I am in a scarcity mind frame or an abundance mind frame, or working with my clients either individually or as a team, it's a recognizable state that it's either on or off. And when that light switch is off, when we're coming from, broadly speaking, a scarcity mindset, nothing works as well. And that's, I mean, to me, it's just it's astounding. It's not about money. It's not about wealth. It's simply about, are we bringing an attitude to the situation that more deeply connects us with the resources available, or are we bringing attitudes that block us from hearing each other, block us from building on our collaboration? And it's I've been astounded at how it just applies across the board. Relationships, the organization, how I wake up in the morning. It's like abundance or scarcity.
Right. And one of my favorite pieces of your work that you've done is the work you did writing the chapter in my book in Choose Abundance, and really giving us some tools. And that was one of the things we were able to work with in our cohort learning, was to look at some of the distinctions where you talk about getting centered, right? And getting clear about where your head is and having difficult conversations and how to lean into some of those. Is there any takeaway that you want to share about something that you maybe covered in the book or that you covered in our class with regard to those interpersonal challenging situations? Just like identifying the story I tell myself is certainly a good place, is to be self-aware, right? But anything that comes to mind around that?
Sure. Extending from that light switch metaphor, I guess the invitation that I make to everyone is to switch from asking the question, am I right about this or am I wrong about this? Like that's the given question that our culture invites us to ask when we have an opinion or a conclusion or suspicion. Whether I'm right or wrong isn't the most useful question. The most useful question is, however I'm thinking about this, whichever story I'm telling myself, does that way of thinking put me in a place where I'm going to deal with this in a better way or in a worse way? That's really what it all comes down to. Am I putting myself in a mindset that increases my chances of succeeding with this person in front of me, with this project? And we can always fine tune our mindset so that we're in more productive, more empowering mindsets that will increase the possibility of accomplishing what we're committed to.
That's great. I love that. And I just love the idea of which narrative empowers you, right? Which thing
Which,
is going to help you to be a more effective fundraiser, or be able to boldly have a conversation with an individual who's part of your organization, so that they see that they could be they could belong more, right? That they
yeah,
could have a deeper role and a deeper connection to your organization. So being brave in front of some of those things that make us nervous or scared or whatever, some of your tools have been really critical for that. Yeah.
yes. I'll tell a very quick story to illustrate that. I had a client who got that and got that he had been being right and being righteous with somebody, and had actually crossed a line into starting to offend the person, when he actually got it and realized that what he needed to do was get humble again and get into him. He went to the guy and apologized and ended up getting a $3.5 million gift
Oh my gosh.
from an apology. I mean,
Wow.
that was not the only piece of the whole story, obviously, but
Right.
it's the biggest single example I know of.
Yeah. I mean, something about being humble and not so full of ourselves always opens doors, right? It really does. Well, Zemo, I want to thank you so much for your time and for coming here and doing this. It's so lovely to partner with you over the years, and I look forward to seeing you again in our next cohort coming up and for doing this work together for years to come. So thanks for your time and your partnership.
Thank you, Laurie. Always
All
a
right.
pleasure.
Yeah. Have a great day in Mexico.